Blog Talk Radio.
Hello, everyone. This is Lori Smith on Blog Talk Radio. It is 9:30 p.m. Calgary, Alberta, April the 2nd, Friday night. I'm happy to be here. This is Child Abuse Prevention and Human Rights Abuse Prevention is Up to Us, and we're on for half an hour just talking about the Survivor to Thriver workbook. We've been going through this now for, I don't know, probably 2-3 weeks, at least maybe 3 weeks now. It's 115 pages long. We're on page 88, and we have ways to go. We're on step 9, and there's 21 steps in this workbook, the Survivor to Thriver workbook. So that's what we're going to look at again tonight. I really want to I want to finish this workbook. You know, when I started out looking at this workbook, I thought, well, maybe I'll just go over the first beginning part of it and not do the whole thing. But really, it's so interesting, and it's so helpful for people like myself who are, you know, survived childhood abuse and still walking out some of my healing, you know, and I have come a long, long way, I tell you that. But still, it's so good to see that there is help out there for people who have suffered, you know, in their childhood or their youth with abuse. And it's just so important to know, you know, that there's help out there and that we just need to reach out and get it, because it's not going to fall in our laps. Usually it doesn't. I don't know, it might for some people, and that would be great, you know, but I haven't seen that. I haven't experienced that in my own life, so I can imagine that it doesn't just land in our laps. We have to go out and get it. We have to go out and reach out and get that help that we need, whether it's professional help, counselor, therapist, you know, or and that's recommended for sure. And I wish that I would have reached out years ago, because I would have been so much further along in my healing process, I think, as I've talked to quite a few counselors and therapists now since I started reaching out. And I see that they're actually out there to help people, not hurt people, which I thought they were out to hurt everybody, so I didn't want to get any help. But that's because my parents had kind of warped my view on therapists and people that were out to help us, right? So, yeah, that's what I thought we'd just keep looking at here tonight and continue on with that in the evenings, on the evening program. So that's what we're doing. And, you know, this is not a professional show. It's not meant to replace professional help in any way. I don't hold any counseling certificates or therapist certificates. I'm just a person who pays to do my own Blog Talk Radio show because I want to bring information out to people regarding child abuse, child rights, and human rights, and mostly child abuse issues, because it's such a huge epidemic, and I think not enough people are talking about it. Not enough people, you know, are looking for answers. I think we're gonna all have to kind of come together. Excuse me, my voice is terrible. I've been sort of sleeping on and off all day, and just catching up on some rest because I was just so tired. And I was off today, so I thought, well, I'll take advantage of it. But now my voice is just terrible, so sorry about that. But abuse, you know, the subject of abuse, whether it's domestic abuse and violence, child abuse, issues like this is just not talked about because it's such an uncomfortable topic. Most people find it so uncomfortable that they can't even hold a conversation about it. And I've been dealing with it for over 40 years now, so I'm totally okay talking about it. But years ago, I wouldn't have maybe been in a place where I could talk about it in a proactive way. I would mostly be angry about it. And now I've come far enough now that I can talk about it as a topic and a subject instead of becoming angry. So, you know, that's the whole issue. It's very emotional. It's a hard subject to talk about, but we need to talk about it if we're ever going to see any change, if we're ever going to see any progress in this fight against child abuse. You know, it's such a huge issue. So I'm going to keep talking, and I'll just keep doing Blog Talk Radio as long as I can afford to keep doing it. And I'm just going to be one more voice out there to add to all the other, thank God, all the other voices that are out there right now talking about it. And I'm so happy to just be one more voice. That's all. That's all it is. I don't care if people, you know, if people know who I am. That just makes no difference to me. It's the fact that we need to stop child abuse. And if it takes my voice to add to it, and then somebody else will listen to this, and they'll say, hey, I want to be a voice. And then pretty soon somebody else will hear, and they'll be like, I want to be a voice. And all of us will eventually get together and just be the voice for these children out there right now who are being abused right now, and hopefully make a dent in this thing and get some laws changed and get some things happening in our own communities to stop child abuse. So that's just a huge issue. So, well, that's what we're looking at. You know, so I'm not a professional, and I'm just a student. I'm a part-time student at MRU. I'm in between courses. I'm still registered and enrolled, but I can't afford to go right now, and so I'm in between classes, and I study in between times, and I find all kinds of great info. So I thought, well, I'll just keep bringing it out to people and sharing it with everyone. And so that's how this Blog Talk radio show kind of came about. And So, you know, if you're a young person under the age of 18, make sure you have someone listening to this, and make sure you have someone who knows what you're doing online. There's a lot of really crazy people online trying to get a hold of kids. They'll use all kinds of different ways to do it. They'll pose as other people. They'll pose as teenagers. These are adults. They're sexual predators, child sexual predators. You have to be careful, and you have to let somebody know what you're doing at all times when you're online because of the issue. And it's a shame. We should be free to use the internet, but the thing is there's so many psycho people out there who are just out to get people, and especially children. You have to really watch out. So make sure you have an adult listen to this show with you so that they can okay it, make sure it's okay for you to listen to, and then if you have questions, they can help you find the answers, because abuse is kind of a scary topic, and you might have questions and then you won't know maybe who to talk to about it. So it's so important to find someone, a parent, maybe a teacher, counselor at school, someone who can listen to this with you, and a coach or something, just to sort of help you to see if if you should be listening to it. And everyone else, if you're a survivor of child abuse and you haven't kind of come a long way in your healing, you might not want to listen to the show because it could trigger you, and you have to use your own discretion. So everyone, listen at your own discretion, please. If you're not feeling like it's a topic that you can handle and it's just going to bother you, please turn the show off. And because it's your prerogative. So if it's going to make you uncomfortable, please turn the show off. You won't be hurting my feelings at all. We have to be responsible for listening to, and so listen at your own discretion, please. And then we have, I'm going to start right away with the Survivor to Thriver workbook, found at www.ascasupport.org. That's the Adult Survivors of Child Abuse, a Morris Center program. www.ascasupport.org. That's a great website. They have ASCA meetings. Well, some of the cities actually around North America actually host ASCA meetings, which would be great. My city doesn't have one, unfortunately, or I'd be hooked up in there right away. But they do have online support groups. They have peer support groups. They have, all kinds of stuff. You can check their website out, and you can pull up this workbook there, the Survivor to Thriver workbook, if you want to go through it with me. We're on page 88, step 9. And we're going to start right now. I'll just read from the page, and I usually throw my own stuff in there just to give people an idea of what one survivor might have to say about the issue of, survivor issues, right? And you might relate to some of it, and then some of it you might not be able to. We all suffer different kinds of abuse. It's horrible. Some of us have suffered more. Some of us have suffered longer durations of time and different severities, different kinds of abuse. So some of it, we can relate to. Some of it we can't. But it's really informative for people who, if you're a person who supports someone and someone who was abused as a child, this can be very helpful for you too, as a supporter of a survivor of child abuse, because you can kind of see what happens and why they think the way they do, and why they do what they do, right? It's really important to kind of have an idea of what causes people to behave the way that they do, and especially with survivor issues, right? So step 9, I have identified the parts of myself connected to self-sabotage. And it says this step involves identifying and sorting out all the various aspects of yourself so that you can understand which parts are helpful and which are responsible for self-sabotaging acts in your life. Self-sabotage is probably a source of some of the problems you identified in your inventory in Step 8. We were supposed to go through and do an inventory in Step 8. By now, you probably know where the self-sabotage comes from and how it affected you as a child. Now, as an adult, you need to look at the part of you that controls this behavior and how it expresses itself in your everyday life. And it says, as you identify the parts of you responsible for this self-sabotage, you will probably discover adult versions of the childhood roles you played. Many of the most common roles that adult survivors used as children are still employed, but bear different labels, such as codependent for caretaker, masochist for scapegoat, offender for bully, leader for hero, and eccentric for recluse. Although certain aspects of these roles may help you in your daily functioning, they will create problems for you if you let them dominate your interactions. For example, caretaking is an essential part of parenting, but dominating or over-controlling your child is a common characteristic of codependent mothers. And try to identify what roles you adopt as an adult, the positive ones as well as the problematic ones, and learn to strengthen the healthy aspects of yourself while controlling the less helpful ones. Learning to strengthen the healthy aspects of yourself while controlling the less helpful ones will be a major task in Stage 2 and Stage 3 recovery. And then they have some self-help recommendations here for self-help and also for the professional help, so we'll read those too. Self-help, number 1, write about your various adult roles or parts in your journal and explore how they operate in your life. Describe in as much detail as you can when these roles emerge, what behaviors are connected to them, and what feelings about yourself and others they engender. Who seems to trigger the emergence of the roles in you? Spouse or lover, children, peers, superiors at work, family, members of the opposite sex, or people of the same sex as your abuser? Do you own these parts for yourself or project them onto others? And number 2, ask the trusted people in your life how they see you. Don't react to anything they say immediately. Instead, reflect on their comments for a day or two and see how others' observations compare to the various roles you have identified for yourself. That's kind of interesting. You'd have to really trust this person, right, to take that kind of criticism, like, to take that kind of honesty from somebody, because you'd have to really make sure that it was honest and not just somebody trying to, because trust is a huge issue with abuse survivors. And so you would have to really trust this person to do that and to be honest, and but not hurtful, but just honest. And sometimes that helps, so we can see just what we're doing and why we're self-sabotaging, and take because we might not be able to see it, but somebody else might. But I think I would only do that with somebody if I really knew that I could trust their opinion, because some people are just nasty, and we know, I grew up with a whole family full of nasty people, and so, I know that there's all kinds of hurtful people out in the world, so you want to make sure it's somebody that's looking out for your best interests, but yet will be honest, right? And then number 3, share in ASCA meetings regarding your progress in identifying the various roles you play and the aspects of yourself that are self-sabotaging. Also, share how you are gaining mastery over these areas. So we could do that in any group therapy session or group meeting, right? Group survivor meetings and stuff like that. And it says, if you haven't done so already, try to record your dreams in your journal so that you can see how the different parts of you interact on an unconscious level. Record each dream in story form with a beginning, a middle, and an end. Tell the story in the first person and develop the details and imagery as you write. Many people think that because they don't remember their dreams, they don't dream. This is inaccurate. Everyone dreams, although denial and repression may make your dreams unavailable to your conscious awareness. Practicing remembering your dreams will help you actually remember them. Develop a routine of leaving your journal next to your bed, and when you first wake up, ask yourself what dreams you had and record them. That's quite interesting. That's a good idea. I know I had a lot of dreams over the years, but I kind of stopped dreaming about the abuse that I suffered about 3 years ago, which is just absolutely fantastic, wonderful. But the thing is, I used to have nightmares, and I actually did record them in my book. But I had a blog going, and I actually recorded one anyway. But I used to wake up in the middle of the night just crying, and just I couldn't even stop crying. It was terrible. Professional help. Number 1, this is recommendations for professional help. Working with your therapist, try to give expression to all of the different roles you play. You cannot learn how to strengthen or reduce the parts without first giving each of them a voice and perhaps even a name. As you experience and express each part or role, try to relate it to specific memories, images, and dialogues from your past. What were the conflicts in these situations? What about each part made you feel good? Which of your roles comes out most frequently with your therapist? And does it help you to get what you want from your therapist? And if not, talk with your therapist about what roles or role might be more effective in getting you what you want and need. So what role would be more, like whatever role we have that's very positive, which would be, like the caretaker or the hero, whatever. If that's something that's a positive role in your life and it doesn't seem to be self-sabotaging, then you could talk to our therapist about that role and maybe how it could be more effective in getting us kind of what we need in our lives, right? And number 2, this is a crucial time in your therapy because it can be tricky to enhance the healthy parts of your personality and at the same time increase your control of the maladaptive parts. Your therapist is well qualified to help you strengthen those parts that promise change and hope. And that's what I would hope, right? That our therapist is well qualified enough to help us to strengthen those parts that are good, right? That are really going to help to make our lives better. And that would be sort of the best case scenario, right? And number 3, in this section we have been talking about parts or roles that are similar to character traits or tendencies. While distinct, they form part of the coherent and unified personality that is you. If you are aware of having antagonistic or aggressive subpersonalities or multiple personalities that are more autonomous than this. You will need strong guidance from your therapist to decide how best to reduce their impact on and intrusion into your life. A discussion of true multiple personalities and ways of working with persons who exhibit them is beyond the scope of this manual. Briefly stated, however, the predominant therapeutic approach today is to ask you to speak to the various subpersonalities within yourself and negotiate a sort of truce that will reduce the power of these persecutory parts and help you to regain full control over your primary personality. And this can happen, there's lots of people that have DID and other multiple personalities and whatnot, and I don't think that I've never experienced an issue where, another person inside of me or another personality would take over or even just be there. I don't seem to have that issue, thank God, you know what I mean? But I know that there's people out there that haven't. It must be incredibly hard because one personality might be stronger than the other, and the one personality that has sort of maybe some real maladaptive behaviors might take over in times when it's just not good timing, at work, or could be at a store or something, and cause problems for these people. And it's not their fault. It's just that this sort of thing can happen, especially with child sexual abuse. We know this. I've been reading quite a bit about it. You can find that out on the web. Just start searching out information on DID and different things like that, child sexual abuse, and it's just horrible, what people go through. And I'm thankful I don't have to deal with that, you know what I mean? I've got just myself to deal with, which is hard enough. I mean, it's just hard enough to deal with one personality, let alone, another one or two or three that are causing problems and maybe not as maybe these personality traits are quite self-sabotaging, so it could be a problem. So I guess you have to sort of maybe negotiate a truce with these personalities within and say, look, we're going to have to make a truce here, and we're going to have to learn how to adapt together, all of us, right? However many you might have, right? So important. And then we'll look at step 10. We have about 15 minutes left. Step 10 is on page 90 of the Survivor Thriver workbook, and it says, I can control my anger and find healthy outlets for my aggression. This is one area that I had problems with for many, many years, and anger actually was just eating me up. It was destroying me, really. It was destroying my life. It was destroying my body physically, just being in a state of anger all the time, and keeping my I don't know what you want to call that, but just keeping my body upset all the time, right? I had a lot of anger issues. I wouldn't really necessarily be violent towards anybody because I don't believe in abuse, and I was always trying to be the good person, and not hurt people, right? But if someone said to me something that I didn't like, somebody in an airport, let's say, messed up my ticket, I would just go off on them and almost be removed from the airport by the police, things like this, because my rage was just at the top, it was always sitting right at the top. So all somebody had to do was just say something that I didn't want to hear, and because that's how I grew up. My mom was very raging. She was abusive, and she was raging at me all the time. So if she wasn't raging, then she was depressed. So it was either she was really down and not saying anything at all, or she was extremely irate and angry and pissed off, and violent. So I grew up like that. So I just kind of continued it on, and for years, even into my 30s, and in my 30s, I was still doing that. And I met the man that I'm with today, and he's my better half, I would say. He really showed me that I had I didn't realize I even had anger problems. I just thought it was natural for me, right? And he was like, man, I don't know, you're too much. You just fly off the handle. I don't even have to say anything, and you're throwing dishes and breaking things and threatening to hurt me. And he was scared, and it's sad, right? So I didn't realize I guess I just didn't snap because I grew up like that, and I had to sit back and actually do a lot of work on myself. But we took a year off. We broke off, and I went out on my own for a year, and I did a whole lot of behavioral sort of looking at my behavior on the inside to see just how much of a problem my anger was. And I actually kind of learned how to deal with a lot of things in that year just by allowing myself to feel things, because I was on my own and I didn't have to worry about anybody being around, and I could actually spend the time I needed to grieve, to mourn, to allow myself to cry and get mad and not hurt anybody, but just let this anger out. And so I'm really glad that I did that, because when we got back together the next following year, which was like exactly a year just to the date pretty much, I was in so much better place to be in a relationship because I had gotten rid of a lot of that anger, and that was in my 30s. But I still, I still have to keep a check on myself, So we'll start reading this. This is really good. So I can control my anger and find healthy outlets for my aggression. Step 10 is similar to Step 6. Anger and aggressive or abusive behavior are intricately connected. This step focuses on mastering control over your abusive behavior and establishing safe and acceptable methods of discharging your aggression. Anger may be a natural emotional response to your childhood abuse, but aggression and abusive behavior directed at others repeats old patterns. You need to manage these emotions carefully to avoid hurting yourself or someone else. Becoming an abuser would obviously set back your recovery because in so doing, you would undermine the compassion you are developing for the child victim you were and the adult survivor you are. Remember that feelings of anger don't have to be expressed as aggressive or abusive behavior. It says, aggression is both learned and a product of physiological factors, mostly hormonal. But aggression, we mean abusive or domineering aggressiveness directed at other people. Well, that's by aggression, we mean abusive or domineering aggressiveness directed at other people. Children often learn from their parents or guardians to respond with aggression towards others during stressful situations. For this reason, many survivors get stuck at this step because their aggression has such a firm hold over them. Survivors can learn to respond aggressively to conflict situations very early in life. That was me. I was a little kid and I was pushing little kids away. If they wanted to come up and talk to me, I'd just push them away, and I had a hard time with my aggression. It was just horrible. This is then reinforced by the relationships they attract and enter into, as well as the influence in an increasingly violent popular culture. Boys may be more likely to identify with their fathers and girls with their mothers because they are the same sex. However, this is not always the case. Many survivors identify with and learn violent behavior from the parent of the opposite sex. You can't change the past, but you can develop new strategies for controlling aggressive behavior in your current and future relationships. And then I have some self-help stuff here and some professional stuff here too. For professional help, and we'll look at the self-help stuff. Aggressive behavior and anger and stuff is what kind of caused me to want to self-harm, even up until the age of about 40, I was still thinking about ending my life and still thinking that it might be the only way I could get out of that pain, and wanting to show that pain to the world. I was thinking I would just self-harm, and thank God I never did, and thank God it didn't end my life too, right? But the thing is, and don't ever do that. That's just not the answer, because that we want to have a good, healthy life. We want to have the life that we deserve to have, and if you didn't get that as a child, then you have to fight for it as an adult. That's what I say: fight to stay alive, fight to be well, fight to keep going, and just fight every day to get one step closer to having a decent life that you deserved, which you didn't have as a child. So and it's a fight, because you have to stay with it, you have to stay on it. It's not easy. There's days where it's really hard, and then there's other days it's a lot easier. So you have to hang in there and be happy for the good days, and really find someone who you can talk to, and someone who will be there for you. I have a lot of support, and I even have some people here in my chat room here tonight that are my good friends. And I've got friends in Australia, I've got friends in the UK, I've got friends in Canada, the United States, but because I started to reach out, all these hands started reaching out to me. And these are awesome people that, I know if I'm having a bad day, or if I need someone to talk to, they are there for me. And that's just so important, right? Because we need to have people in our lives that can help us get through this stuff. So, you want to make sure that you reach out and get some help, no matter what that help is. You want to reach out and get it, because we do deserve it. We don't deserve to suffer in silence and suffer along and be in pain. We deserve to actually make some good, quality friendships and some good support group people in your life who really are rooting for you and want you to make it and to have a good life, right? So the self-help portion of this says, number one, regardless of what happened to you as a child, you are always responsible for your actions as an adult. Just as your parents' abusers were responsible for what they did to you years ago. That's a fact. That's me throwing that in there. We have to be responsible for ourselves. We have to take that responsibility on to get the help that we need, so that we don't continue on that garbage lifestyle that our parents put on us, you know what I mean? And it's really hard when you have to learn and start from scratch. learning how to get along in this life if you survive child abuse and you have to start from scratch, just to learn how to cope, just to learn how to stay on the earth. I mean, that makes me angry, but we're talking about anger issues here, but honestly, like that's it's hard for people. But we are responsible for our own healing. We're responsible to get that help. We're responsible to reach out and make sure that we do get help and not abuse other people around us just because we were abused, and not abuse our children if we have children because we were abused. That's what my mom did. My mom was abused as a child and turned around and abused me and a couple of other family members as well. Some of the siblings in the home were not abused by her, but she was okay with them. But there was some of us that she just lashed out on and took her aggression out on us, and some of the other ones just think she was great, and some of us are thinking, well, no, she wasn't that great. So it's unfortunate, but she didn't pick on us all. She just picked on a few of us, and it's unfortunate. So we can't go out now and be abusive to people just because we were abused. We have to be responsible for our actions, and that's why, we don't want to repeat that cycle of abuse. It's so important because it's a huge issue. It says some survivors harbor fantasies about getting revenge or punishing their abusers for what happened or for what occurred. It is one thing to have these thoughts and quite another to think about acting on them. If you entertain fantasies such as these, you are entering dangerous territory, and we suggest that you seek professional help immediately. Actions taken on such thoughts could constitute criminal acts and subject you to severe penalties, including jail. That's right. Because honestly, if we go out and abuse other people, then or if we go out and take revenge on the people who abused us, we're just as bad as them, right? Honestly, like if that's all our life is about, is getting revenge, then we're just as bad as the people that hurt us. We're no better. The thing to do is to be better, to be a better person, and whether you can forgive or not doesn't matter. But it's better just to if you have to take them to court and whatever, if you have to get restitution that way, that's fine. But just to go out and hurt somebody or try to vindicate the abuse in an abusive manner is just no better than what they did to their own children. So that's the whole issue, right? And number two, you have good reason to be angry, but you need to be able to separate your right to have these feelings from your right to act on them, see. As is stated in the ASCA meeting guidelines, we draw a line between thinking or feeling angry and actually doing something abusive through words or actions. If you can learn to express your feelings with people you trust, as opposed to acting out feelings against them, you can dissipate this built-up aggression without becoming another abuser, right? For men who are inclined to aggression and violence, this may be one of the most important steps of recovery and most difficult to achieve, right? So important. We've got about 2 minutes left. There's so much to this section here. There's make a list of the situations where you lose control of your behavior and become aggressive. Can you identify the determining factor in losing control? What feelings tend most to trigger the abusiveness? And what do you hope to accomplish by reacting aggressively? Does it work? How do you think the person at whom you are directing your aggression feels? And do you feel optimistic about being able to control this part of you, or do you feel hopeless? Are there any external factors such as alcohol or drug use that might be related to losing control? And what are your healthiest options for controlling your frustrations and coping with stress? Once you have identified them, see if you can't find ways to apply them in typical situations where you lose control. So we'll have to continue on with this another time. I'm the Canada Regional Director for Dreamcatchers for Abused Children. I'm so happy to stand with them, just to promote awareness, education, prevention of child abuse. And you can check their website out, www.dreamcatchersforabusedchildren.com or .org. Either one will get you there. And let me tell you, we have to do the right thing, and we have to become educated on child abuse, on the signs and symptoms of all the different kinds of child abuse, physical abuse, emotional abuse, sexual abuse, psychological abuse. We need to know what the signs and symptoms are and what to look for, and then we need to know how to report it. Because if a child comes to you and discloses they've been abused, what would you do? How would you handle it? You can mess up a case for a child. They can end up back in the home and lose their lives if we don't report it properly. So that's why I would suggest you go to the website and check it out. There's a free PDF download It's called The Child Abuse Handbook, written by the founder and CEO, Sandra Dawn Potter, and also the president and best-selling author, Donna Shear. They wrote The Child Abuse Handbook, and it's a free PDF download. You can get it right from their site. And I highly recommend it because, if a child comes to you and says they've been abused, you need to know what to do, how to handle it, because you can mess up a case for a child. We want to save children's lives, so you need to know how to report it, and then you need to report it. Do not just assume and say, oh, I don't want to mess up a happy home, because abused children are not happy, let me tell you. And you could save a child's life by getting involved. And in your own communities, take a look in your own communities at who's doing what and what is working, and get involved with that group and support them in any way that you can. April is the National Child Abuse Awareness Month in the United States and around the world, sort of different areas, different places. So make sure you get involved within your own communities to make a difference and stop child abuse. Thanks so much for tuning in, everybody. I'll be back in tomorrow morning, back on here 7 o'clock in the morning, Mountain Standard Time. Child abuse prevention and human rights abuse prevention is up to us for some more Survivor to Thriver workbook. So take care, everybody. Thank you so much for your support. I just love you all so much. And you're in my heart, you're in my prayers, and we'll be talking to you soon. Take care. Bye-bye.